There's something about working alone at night that changes the way you see people. During the day, a stranger walking through the door is just a customer. But at night, when the parking lot is empty and the road outside has gone quiet, that same stranger feels like something else entirely. These are three real accounts from people who were just doing their jobs. Clocking in, showing up, getting through the shift. None of them expected to become a target. And none of them ever looked at a late-night shift the same way again. My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a small dive bar in the quieter part of my town. The place sits right off the highway. Nothing fancy, just a dimly lit spot where the regulars know each other by name, and the jukebox has been playing the same rotation of classic rock for as long as anyone can remember. Most of our customers are locals, truckers passing through, and the occasional lost tourist looking for a stiff drink. I like it though. The routine is predictable. The tips are surprisingly decent. And after a while you learn how to read people, the talkers, the flirters, the quiet drinkers, the ones who just want to be left alone. Weekends are hectic. But during the week I work my night shifts alone. No bar back, no coworkers, just me. I tend to stay vigilant because of the crowds we attract. Bar fights happen. So when someone walks in, I clock them immediately. It was sometime after 1 in the morning on a Tuesday when he walked in. I would have guessed late 40s, but he was extremely clean-cut and well-groomed. Not the kind of look you would expect from someone his age in a place like this. He was wearing a black turtleneck under a black trench coat, well-dressed, but casual about it. He carried himself with this quiet sophistication that made you think of real money. Not the loud kind. The kind that does not need to announce itself. He had oddly good posture, and he glanced around the bar slowly before walking straight to a stool and sitting down. When I walked over, he looked at the bottles behind me and ordered something top shelf without hesitating. As I poured his drink, he asked if I liked working here. Normal enough question. I told him yeah and smiled. He chatted with me for a bit, which I did not mind since the bar was quiet. Then he asked if I ever thought about doing something bigger. Somewhat strange, but not alarming on its own. I gave him my standard bartender smile and said I was happy for now. He nodded and sipped his drink. He looked almost disappointed, which I found odd. After a long pause, he asked what time I got off. That question surprised me. I had not picked up any flirting from him at all, so I was a little let down to realize the whole conversation had just been a setup for that. I smiled and gave him a vague answer, brushing it off without seeming rude. He did not press. He just smiled like he already knew something I did not. Then he drained his drink, placed a crisp $100 bill on the bar like it was nothing, and walked out into the night without another word. I did not know what to make of it. Strange encounter, but I figured I would never see him again. I was wrong. About a week later, he came back. This time he was not alone. There was a woman with him. She looked to be in her mid-30s, dressed in a way that did not quite match her age, trendy but slightly off, like someone working hard to blend in with a younger crowd. Everything about her felt calculated. The way she smiled too easily. The way she leaned against the bar like we were already friends. As I set napkins down in front of them, the very first thing she said to me was not a greeting or a drink order. It was a compliment. She put on this wide, bright smile and said, "You are so pretty." Her fingers brushed my arm as she said it, lingering just a beat longer than felt natural. I laughed and thanked her, but I could immediately tell something was off about this woman. The man said nothing, which was strange given how talkative he had been the first time. They ordered drinks, and while I poured, the questions started. How long had I been working here? How old was I? Little small talk questions that did not feel like small talk. I answered in short, polite sentences. At one point, she glanced over at the man, and something passed between them without a single word being spoken. Then she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice like she did not want to be overheard, and told me she ran an exclusive event club. She said she was always looking for young, fun people for private parties. She said I would make a killing. $10,000 for a weekend. I let out a small forced laugh and told her it sounded too good to be true. She insisted it was real. Said a bunch of girls just like me worked for them. Her smile never moved. Not even slightly. She kept circling the same words: fun, safe, exclusive, like she had rehearsed them. Then casually, almost as an afterthought, she said I should step outside for a second, that there was someone who could explain it better. My pulse spiked. I was done pretending. I said I was good. Firm. No smile this time. Right at that moment, a group of loud customers walked in through the front door. The woman's expression shifted, just for a second, just enough, before she turned to the man beside her. Without another word, they both got up and left. I told my coworkers and my boss what happened. We agreed to keep an eye out if they came back. My boss reminded me the cameras were on and that he was 15 minutes away if I needed him. There was not much else to do. They had not technically broken any laws. I tried to move on. Then a few nights later, after closing, I saw the car. It was parked across the street, engine off, just sitting there. I told myself it was nothing, but the feeling of being watched crept over my skin like static. I kept my head down, walking to my car, keys gripped tight in my hand. When I pulled out of the lot, I checked my mirrors. The car followed. It stayed back just enough to avoid being obvious, but every turn I made, it was still there. I took a random turn down a side street. Still there. I forced myself to stay calm, to think. And then, without hesitating, I pulled straight into the parking lot of a police station. The second I pulled in, the car sped off. Nothing happened for a while after that. I started to wonder if it was over. It was not. It was a slow weekday shift. Barely anyone coming in. By midnight, I was wiping down the counter and half considering closing early when the door creaked open. It was the woman. I sent my boss a text as quickly and quietly as I could, then looked back up. She was already walking toward the bar, same artificial smile locked in place. She sat down and folded her hands neatly on the counter and said, "Thought I would come check on you." My stomach turned. I told her we were about to close and that she needed to leave. She made a pouty face and asked for just one old-fashioned. I decided pouring the drink would stall her long enough for my boss to get there. I turned around to get started, and then I heard it, the soft, unmistakable click of the front door shutting. I spun around. She was gone. I stepped toward the entrance and looked through the glass. A black van was idling just outside. I locked the front door as fast as I could. Then from the back of the bar, metal rattling. Someone was trying to force the back door open. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal shaker, and dialed 911 with my other hand. I knew the police would not make it in time. I was deciding whether to run for the front door when headlights swung into the lot. It was my boss. The rattling on the back door stopped immediately. Seconds later, the van peeled out of the lot. I fell apart the moment my boss walked in. He had caught the license plate as it left. When the police arrived and reviewed the footage, it was worse than I had imagined. Just before the woman left the bar, the cameras had already captured two masked figures crouching near the front entrance, waiting. There was a third person at the back hammering on the door, trying to drive me out to the front where the others were positioned. The plate came back unregistered. No arrests have been made. My boss does not let me work alone anymore. But I still think about it every time I clock in for a night shift. I still think about the question I cannot answer. How did they know I would be working alone that night? And I still think about what would have happened if I had panicked and run out the front door. I used to work the night shift at a gas station off a quiet stretch of highway. I say used to because after what happened a few months ago, I will never work a night shift again. It was a small station, the kind that barely sees any business once it gets late. Most of my shift was restocking shelves, wiping down counters, and occasionally ringing up a trucker or traveler passing through. I remember every detail of that night. It was just past 2:30 in the morning. The truckers had mostly dried up, and I had nothing to do. I stepped outside for some air, rubbing my hands together against the cold. The parking lot was completely empty, just the pumps, the road, and the dark stretch of trees beyond the lot. The neon sign flickered faintly. The air was hazy, like you could actually see the moisture hanging in it. Even with the highway not far off, It was almost completely silent. Right as I turned to head back inside, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. There was a person standing behind one of the pumps. I had just been out there. I had looked at that entire lot. How had I not seen him? He was wearing a dark red hoodie with the hood up, both hands shoved into his pockets. There was no car anywhere near him, so he was not fueling up. He was not heading toward the store either. He was just standing there, half turned in my direction, like he was watching me. I told myself maybe he was waiting for someone. But something about the way he moved was wrong. He was kind of shuffling in this slow circular pattern that did not make any sense. I went back inside and kept my eyes on him through the glass while pretending not to. After a few minutes, he started walking toward the door, slow at first, then suddenly pushing inside like he had made a decision all at once. He walked straight to the counter, but did not say anything. He just stood there staring at me like he was measuring something. Then, in this rushed, almost rehearsed way, he muttered that his car had broken down just past the pumps. Said he needed a jump or maybe just a little gas to reach the next town. I could not believe he expected me to buy that story. There had been nothing out there when I was standing in that lot 30 seconds ago. I offered to call a tow truck. No, he said, too fast, shaking his head. He just needed a flashlight. Maybe some help checking under the hood. Everything about the way he spoke felt like a script. The way he watched my reaction felt like a test. I asked him where the car was, and he told me it was just past the highway entrance. I was skeptical, but then he pointed at the monitor behind me. I turned and looked at the screen. There actually was a car parked out there. For 1 second I thought, maybe this guy really does need help. And then it hit me. I had just been outside. I would have seen that car. It was not there when I stepped out. I looked closer at the monitor and caught the slightest movement near the back bumper. A shadow shifting. Someone was crouching just out of frame. A cold wave moved through me. I forced a calm smile and told him I would help but needed to grab my phone from the back office first. I turned slowly, walked calmly. The second I was out of his direct line of sight, I slammed my hand onto the emergency panic button under the counter. The alarm screamed through the entire store. I braced myself for him to come at me. But what he did instead was somehow worse. All the nervous energy drained out of him instantly. The fake urgency disappeared. He stopped shifting. His whole body relaxed. And then he smiled. Not a startled smile. Not an embarrassed one. A slow, knowing grin. Like the alarm going off was mildly amusing to him. Like he had all the time in the world. Then in one fluid motion he turned and walked straight out the door. I rushed to the monitors and watched both of them take off, not toward the car, but directly into the tree line behind the station. The car just sat there. Engine off. Headlights off. Nobody inside. By the time the police arrived, the men were gone. No footprints leading away from the trees. No sign of them anywhere. Then one of the officers pointed at something I had not noticed on the monitor. The front passenger door of the car was open. There had been a third person inside the whole time. The police ran the plates a few days later. The car had been reported stolen nearly a week before this happened, over 100 miles away. No one came forward to claim it. No other crimes linked to it. No arrests. Just a stolen car abandoned in the middle of nowhere with no explanation. That was months ago. I still do not have answers. What I do know is this, that man's story was never about the car. Whatever they were planning required me outside, alone, in the dark, away from that panic button. I will never work another night shift again. This happened just a few weeks ago. I worked the night shift at Walmart. After a while, the nights start to blur together. Same shelves, same overhead hum, same routine. I stock the electronics section mostly, which I like because it stays quiet. People do not exactly rush in at 2 in the morning for phone chargers and Bluetooth speakers. Most of the customers at that hour are night owls or truckers grabbing last-minute supplies. That is exactly why I noticed him. At first, I did not think much of it. Just another guy wandering the aisles, maybe waiting for someone. But after a few minutes, I realized he was not shopping. He was not even pretending to. Every time I glanced up, he was nearby, hovering in the next aisle over, standing too still by the clearance section, never picking anything up, never looking at a single product, just watching me. I told myself I was overthinking it. The store is big, but the way he moved, always just close enough for me to notice, never actually doing anything, set something deep in my gut on edge. I waited for him to just walk over and ask for my number, which would have at least been normal. He never approached. It was like he wanted me to see him without actually making contact. That part made no sense to me, and that was the part that scared me most. I went to radio for someone, but the batteries in my radio were dead. I was debating whether to go find a manager when I felt a hand wrap around my arm. I nearly came out of my skin. But before I could react, a woman's voice rang out, loud, warm, overly familiar. She called out, "There you are," and launched into this little speech about how she had been looking all over for me. I turned and saw a woman I had absolutely never seen before in my life. She was smiling with this firm grip on my arm, acting exactly like we were old friends reuniting after years apart. Before I could say a word, she leaned in and dropped her voice to something low and urgent. She said that man had been recording me. She said to follow her. My stomach dropped. I glanced back. The man was still there. Not browsing. Not pretending. Just staring directly at me. I let her pull me. I did not even question it. The way she had grabbed me, the way she spoke so loudly and casually like we were two people who had known each other forever, I clung to it. I was so relieved that a stranger had noticed what was happening and put herself out there to help me. She kept up the whole act as we walked, rambling about a trip or some inside joke we supposedly shared. I barely processed any of it. My mind was still on him. She steered me through the aisles quickly. I did not pay attention to where we were going, only that we were moving away from him. At some point, I glanced back, and he was no longer following. I felt the first wave of actual relief. But she did not slow down. I told her we were good now, and that we should go find my manager. She squeezed my arm tighter and said he was still lurking somewhere. I thought about that for a second. So what? What is he going to do in a store full of employees? I was scared at first because no one was around, but now that I was not alone, the fear had started fading. I told her I was serious and planted my feet, twisting my arm slightly to loosen her grip. "You can let go now," I said. She did not. She smiled at me and said, "Come on, just a little further," and she was actually tugging me at that point. I looked around and felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. We had moved past the registers, past the self-checkout, past every aisle that saw foot traffic. Ahead of us was the warehouse section, dim, nearly empty, and beyond that was the side exit, the one without cameras, the one employees use for loading shipments. She was walking me straight toward it. I did not think. I screamed for help with everything I had and yanked my arm free. She lost her grip just enough. I did not waste a single second. I turned and ran toward the front of the store as fast as I could move. Behind me, she yelled for me to come back. And then she called my name, which I had never given her. I ran until I saw one of my coworkers rushing toward me, reacting to the screaming. I told him to call security. By the time I finished telling my story to the guards, both of them were gone. When they pulled the security footage, it confirmed exactly what I had suspected. The woman and the man had walked into the store together. They had been working as a team from the very beginning. The man's face was clearly visible in one frame. The woman had kept her face away from every single camera in the store. Not once by accident. Every single time on purpose. The police classified it as a failed abduction attempt. I am still waiting for a resolution. I still do not know how that woman knew my name. That is the part one cannot let go of. Those two people had not just wandered in and picked a random target. They had come there specifically for me. 3 different jobs. 3 different nights. 3 people who showed up to work and ended up fighting their way out of something they never saw coming. The one thing that saved all of them, they trusted the feeling. That quiet alarm that fires somewhere deep before your brain can explain it. They listened to it. If you work alone at night, so should you.